Hi, everybody, and welcome to Lovefraud Live. I'm Donna Andersen, author of Lovefraud.com. Tonight, I'm going to talk about something that just about everyone who has tangled with a sociopath experiences, and that's obsession. Here's how it happens. You learn what the sociopath really is, and you are shocked. You thought this person was telling you the truth. You believed that this person loved you, or whatever the nature of your relationship was, and now you know that everything was fake, and it's all you can think about. So after my short presentation, I'll answer your questions, so please go ahead and send them to me by chat as we go along. All right, so let's talk about obsession. Once upon a time, you were under the illusion that there was an authentic human being in your life. And now the illusion is vaporized. One way or another, you've discovered that your partner, family member, friend, or colleague is a sociopath. So how did this happen? Well, maybe you unearthed one lie too many, or maybe you were involved romantically and the mask slipped and the person unceremoniously dumped you. However it happened, you have learned that he or she has been lying to you all along. And now you're obsessed. You want to know the truth. You want to know where the sociopath really was, who the sociopath was really with, and perhaps, in some cases, what happened to the money. With your new awareness of his or her lying personality, you recall multiple incidents that left you scratching your head, and now you look at them in an entirely different light, trying to figure out what was really going on. So here you are, and the sociopath is all you think about, morning, noon, and night. You keep replaying these incidents in your mind. You go back over old text messages and emails. You may even stalk the sociopath's Facebook or Twitter or other social media to see what he or she is doing now. You are desperate for answers. And you're also wondering, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? Well, the short answer, believe it or not, is that nothing is wrong with you. After you've been involved with a sociopath, obsession is a normal part of the recovery process. Now, this is something that I learned from Dr. Karen Huffer, who unfortunately has passed on. She was a true expert in sociopaths and identified and wrote a book called The Legal Abuse Syndrome. And that's something that can happen to you when you're dealing with sociopaths in court. So in her book, Dr. Huffer outlines 8 steps to recovery from abuse. And believe me, the deception and exploitation by a sociopath qualifies as abuse. So there in her book, she says that step number 3 is obsession. Here's what Dr. Huffer writes about it in the book. Figuring out what happened and needing a basis for feeling safe again preoccupies the victim's life. So this is why you are obsessed. Your ability to perceive reality is critical to your internal sense of safety. So when the sociopath deceives you so that what you thought was reality turned out to be a mirage, therefore your sense of safety was shattered and you want it back. You want to know what was real and what was fake. So obsession is a normal reaction to your experience. Well, at least you know that you're not crazy. Still, it's unhealthy. Why? Because obsession interferes with no contact. Now, no contact means you cut the sociopath out of your life. You do not see this person, you do not talk to them, you do not exchange text messages or emails, you don't visit their Facebook page. When you go no contact, the fog starts to lift and your mind starts to clear. The goal of no contact is to get to the point where you don't even think about the sociopath anymore. Well, if you're obsessing, you're thinking about this person, which, unfortunately, is a form of being in contact. So, what do you do about the obsession? On the one hand, obsession is normal. On the other hand, it interferes with your recovery. What is the solution? Here's what you do. You manage your obsession. Now, typically, this means that you set time limits that on the time that you allow yourself to think about the sociopath. To do this, you may want to employ some strategies of cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, with cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, first what you do is you gather data, and then you make a change to your behavior, and then you evaluate the results. Now, the data in this case would be the amount of time that you spend obsessing about the sociopath. So write it down. Keep a notebook, or maybe make some notes in your phone, and after a few days you add it up and you'll know the extent of your obsession. Then you set a goal to reduce your obsession time. Now, the key here is to make the goal achievable. If you are shocked to discover that you're spending 6 hours a day thinking about this person, cutting back to 1 hour may be too difficult. But perhaps you can manage cutting back to 5 or maybe even 4 hours a day, with the goal of eventually reducing the time even more as you move forward. So you allow yourself a certain amount of time for obsession. And then what do you do for the remaining hours of the day when you are tempted to obsess, but you don't want to? You distract yourself. You find something else to occupy your time and your mind. So maybe you'll binge watch movies on Netflix, or maybe you'll read an entire series of crime thrillers. I heard from one Lovefraud reader who said that she worked on jigsaw puzzles. It calmed her mind. Physical activity of any kind is also a good idea. One woman told me that she dug holes in her yard and filled them in again. And at any point, if you find yourself drifting off to your obsession during a time where you don't want to, you pull yourself back and refocus. You might also want to consider EFT tapping. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, and this is a form of acupressure that breaks the connection between a memory and the emotional charge of the memory. So tapping, as you think about your experience with a sociopath, will help to decondition your brain to the obsessive responses. In fact, Lovefraud offers a webinar called EFT Tapping to break your addiction to the sociopath. Our instructor, Stacy Vornbrock, explains that emotions are chemicals, and negative emotions create negative chemicals, and your body can actually become addicted to the negative chemicals. So Stacy teaches you a tapping technique, which means that you use your fingers to tap on your face, kind of looks like this, and other places of your body. It looks silly, it really does. But believe it or not, it works. And quite a few Lovefraud readers have taken the webinar and have had good results with it. So there's a link to the webinar in the description below. I'm almost finished with the presentation, so if you have any questions for me, please send them along. I see there's been a lot of chatting going on. And if you're watching this video after the live stream, ask your question in the Lovefraud Forum. There's a link for the forum in the description below as well. So, the bottom line, therefore, is that obsession is a normal phase that you go through after you discover that you've been betrayed by a sociopath. Instinctively, you are trying to figure out the truth so that you can recover your sense of safety. But the time comes when obsession interferes with your recovery. So by managing the time that you spend obsessing, you can pass through this phase and move on to the rest of your life. Okay, so let's see if there's any questions here. Okay, well, it seems like our little session here feels like group therapy. I'm really glad That's good. So Monica says you obsess, especially when it's a family member. Yeah, I can certainly understand that because especially if it's a close family member like parents or a sibling. I mean, you've been around them for your entire life, and to come to the realization that someone in your immediate family is disordered is really a shock. And in a lot of ways, I mean, not only, the whole, the manipulation and the lying and the disappointment, because, we all want our family to care for us, but there's this extra layer that goes on when it's a family member. And it's that, because you've been around this type of behavior all your life and you thought it was normal, and then you find out later that it's not normal and that there's something wrong with this person, you have this whole dimension of trying to not only recover from what was going on, but also to come up with an idea or a way of being and a way of living in life that you don't have. So what you grew up with and what you learned all your life is not normal. So what is normal? So there's this whole other dimension of recovery when the person who is disordered is a close family member. Let's see if we have any other comments or questions. Mary says, for years I thought it was like a Rubik Cube that I couldn't put it down. 32 years. Oh, CC says 32 years. Yeah, and that happens especially when in the cases where there's like no clear violence or no clear crime or anything really bad. Those cases of disorder, the ones that are like in the middle or towards the low end, I mean, they're actually harder to deal with because the person seems to be normal more often than, like, if you're dealing with someone who's doing drugs or getting violent or something like that. It's pretty easy to spot that something is wrong with this person. But the ones who like can hold a job and can be charming and polite in social settings and can sometimes be nice to you and sometimes can be thoughtful and but then maybe behind closed doors their personality always changes. Those are the cases that are more difficult to spot and often more difficult to escape because the bad behavior isn't as identifiable. So I can imagine how you can, yes, figure it out, look at it like a Rubik's Cube, trying to figure out what's going on here, until you finally discover that the person is totally disordered. You could twist your mind around it for quite a long time. Okay, what else do we have? So Mary says she did eventually put it down. Good for you. Glad to hear that, Mary. CC is me says, nothing was ever sincere as a question. The problem with people with these personality disorders, especially antisocial, narcissistic, and psychopathic, is that there really is nothing inside. I mean, they talk about empty suits. These people really are empty suits. They're cardboard cutouts. There's nothing. There's no passion. There's no feeling. There's no core to their personalities, and so, yeah, I mean, nothing is real. And so everything is like play acting. So there is nothing to grasp onto, and often people have a sense of this. They kind of have this feeling, or you may have this feeling that there's nobody home inside, and even when you kind of suspect that and you say that can't be true, but then when you discover that it is true, it really throws you for a loop. So that means that no, nothing was sincere because they're incapable of being sincere, and everything was transactional. I mean, everything was just had an objective or an ulterior motive. And that's really hard to wrap your brain around, but unfortunately it is true. Okay, what else do we have? Okay, CC is me says she's obsessing about my divorce negotiations. Yeah. When you are in the midst of dealing with someone like this, and you have no choice but to deal, with the obsession, it's hard to get out of it. So what I would suggest for you, CC, is to pick up Dr. Huffer's book, which is called The Legal Abuse Syndrome. And she has a lot of good information in there about dealing with the internal aspects of dealing with these situations. Because what happens, especially if you're dealing with a sociopath in court, is that you keep getting re-traumatized, and that's what the legal abuse syndrome is. What happens is, you go to court and you have this expectation that the court is about justice, and you get there and you find out that it's not, and you find out that the sociopath has a sociopathic lawyer, and you find out that every time you have to go to court and deal with this person, you're re-traumatized. So there's a lot of good information in that book. Again, it's called The Legal Abuse Syndrome, that will help you to get a handle on what you're experiencing. And she also has in the book a chart, I guess you could call it, where you go through the 8 steps to really identify who is at fault, which is the other person. I mean, because one of the things that often happens is that we're conditioned to believe that there's 2 sides to every story, and it takes 2 to tango and everything like that. So we're not prepared to deal in situations where one person is clearly wrong and clearly causing trouble. Neither is the court. So that's one of the things that is really helpful, is to really assess the blame of what happens, and to come to understand that the other person is the one who did this. Now, whether or not the court will understand it is another issue, but at least for your personal healing, if you can recognize that what the other person did is wrong, and this person should be responsible for their actions, and this person is to blame, it'll help you to emotionally cope with the entire situation. Okay, Mary Lynn says, I thank God every day that I didn't marry him or have children with a demon. Yes, good for you. And I hope that the folks who are watching this, my videos, the Lovefraud Live videos, can learn what the personality disorders look like, because that's really what we want to accomplish. We want to get to the point where we know that they're out there, we know what they look like, so that we can avoid them. Because, once you get involved, it's so difficult and damaging to extricate yourself from these situations. So prevention is the real key. And prevention means understanding that they exist, knowing what the warning signs are, and most importantly, listening to your intuition. Because as I've said before, your intuition will tell you when something is wrong. But the key is to pay attention to the warning. Okay. So that's it for tonight's show. We'll see you again next week on Lovefraud Live. Again, I'm Donna Andersen, author of Lovefraud.com. If you want more information, get my books. Here's my most recent one. Today's presentation about obsession came from this book, and I've got lots more stuff in them. So anyway, see you next week on Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.